all around here to direct you. They're wearing Olympia Community Solar shirts. Here's Patrick modeling it. And you can ask him about where to go, and he'll get you to where you need to go. We have a lot of people to thank today for making this event possible. We have some amazing event sponsors. Thank you to the Port of Olympia for sponsoring this event. Thank you to the South Sound Sierra Club and the Thurston County League of Women Voters for making this possible today. We also have some incredible local businesses who donated our raffle items for today too, so let's give a hand for our local businesses. I would also like to just call out and acknowledge our board. Our board is some of the most incredible, hardworking people here in Thurston County, and without whom we wouldn't have a clear, straight path to a renewable energy future. So we have our president, Mason Rolfe. We have our secretary, Jasmine McLean. We have our treasurer, Matthew Booth. We have our educational development steward, Matthew Strickland. He's playing games right now. We have our organizational development steward, Faith Adicott. We have our project manager slash steward, Deems Hafner Ratliff, who is installing solar in California right now. So we let it slide that he's not here. And we have Jenna Mason, our house videographer and photographer. So when you see her, please smile and snap a shot so we have great memories for today. We are the people to talk about community solar, so if you have any questions, please see Faith. She's taking Q&As, and see any one of us, and we'll be happy to answer any questions for you today. Olympia Community Solar is so important to me. Not only is this group of people on the board some of the best and most hardworking people, but also my best friends and my families, and our mission to create a clean and equitable renewable energy future is going to be really critical for the future of Olympia and for Thurston County and for all of Washington and really all of the world. And I really see this community as leading the way. And I see a lot of local leaders and elected officials and really incredible community members here. And this project and these projects will not be possible without your support. So I please ask you to participate, and I ask you to learn as much as you can, and please be generous throughout your day here today. So to introduce who we are and how we got started, I'm going to pass the mic over to our president and one of my very best friends, Mason Rolfe.
Hello. I might not use this.
Use it.
Hello, welcome. Thank you all so much for coming. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're on Medicine Creek Treaty land, that we're on occupied territory. And I want to also acknowledge the original stewards of this land, the Nisqually and Squaxin tribes, and thank them for having us and welcoming us here. So this project, this nonprofit, started with an idea that we know we need to transition to renewable energy. We know it needs to happen quickly. And the question is, how is it going to happen? And who is it going to benefit? So the mission of our organization is to see an equitable and an accessible transition to clean energy. And we're hoping to do that in a couple of different ways. One of the first ways is education. We need people to understand solar, its potential, and especially when it gets into more complicated stuff like group ownership models, we need to be able to simply communicate those things. So our hope is that working in partnership with local cities and the county, that we can produce and distribute really clear educational materials. The second way we're doing that is to improve local policy. We know soft costs are part of the thing that prohibits a lot of people from participating. So we're working through the Regional Climate Mitigation Plan to update and enhance Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, and Thurston County solar policy. And we're going to make it so people who want to install solar can do it quickly and cheaply. And we want it so that people who can't access solar directly on their homes can do so through another form like community solar. And then the final way we're doing it is we want to build actual solar projects. Yeah. Here we're highlighting our first project, which we expect to put on the Hands-On Children's Museum here in downtown Olympia. We are shooting for the largest solar project allowable by Washington state law, 124 kilowatts. And if any of you know what that means, it's a big system. We are going to open it up for community ownership, not a subscription, direct ownership that any Washington citizen or organization can participate in. And the idea there is we want to maximize benefit to the museum. They're an awesome organization, and we want to provide people the chance to own solar. If you rent your home, if you have trees over your home, if you don't have the right type of roof, or one of the 100 other reasons why you could justify not doing something that's pretty difficult. And I'm really excited because our work to do this has been supported with a $25,000 donation from the Tides Foundation. They have a community. So I'm excited. We just rented an office right on 4th Avenue downtown. We're stuffing that office full of young, passionate people and saying, hey, we're giving you the time and the money to make your survival possible, to work on bringing more good, clean energy jobs to our state and boosting our local economy through it. So that's the vision, that's the dream. We're going to get there through our community support. That's really the only way we can get there. So I want to thank you all again for coming. We're going to do a Q&A session in a few minutes to answer all your questions. Please enjoy the wine. Put in a question slip with Faith, and I'll throw it back over to Ari.
Thank you, Mason. So I will also be your MC in introducing various parts of our program today. So please enjoy some food, some drink, and we will meet back here at 2:30 for our Q&A. Thank you.
I work with helping this organization be healthy and organized so that we can do the very best work possible for our community. I came to this effort after working with Mason and Jasmine and Ari to try to promote some legislation called 1631. And we all came together and we said, you know, this community is ready to take positive action. This community wants to see a future that's about clean energy. And we're all super, super passionate about trying to make that happen. So I'm going to help facilitate this little conversation. My awesome board members here are the best sources of knowledge around that I know of, and Kirk. So we'll see if he gets to jump in. And I'm going to ask some questions that you guys asked. So Donnie asked, where else is community solar happening?
We have 70 community solar projects that are online, and then in the last round of production incentive certifications, 23 new systems were pre-approved for incentives. And so as long as they build those systems within a year of their approval, they'll come online, they'll get incentives. So yeah, almost 100 systems here in Washington already. And also, one more note, we were the first state in the nation to build a community solar project. It's in Ellensburg. It was the very first community solar project in the United States. Awesome.
Nobody knew that Ellensburg was leading the way, There you go. So I'd also like to point out that there's a ton of community solar projects happening. Seattle City Light runs several projects, both in parks, at the aquarium, and one of the questions that we have here is, are you modeling on anything? And I think for sure the aquarium project is something similar to what we're looking at with the Hands-On Children's Museum. Would anyone else like to pitch in on, are we modeling after someone? There's a lot to learn from. As Mason said, there are projects going on all over the country, all over the state. I think that collectively we have all realized that if we're going to do something to make a difference about the energy that we use in this country and in this world, we do that as a community, and that's the only way that it's going to work. Next question from Valerie Hammett. How do you calculate expenses for customers? Kind of like a ballpark pricing matrix for what that might look like?
You've done all the math, so yeah, he's a math guy.
The first major thing we do is for each project we send out a request for bid. Any contractor in the state can make bids on our project. Once we secure a bid, we know the capital cost of the project itself, and then on top of that we add on our expected expenses for operations and maintenance. We have a few expenses for administering the system. That's the process of taking the benefits that are produced by the system. That's the electricity and the clean energy credits, and moving those from the system to the owners, making sure that they receive their benefits. So things like lawyer fees, it's also just been a learning process as we've been going through the actual development process, learning about the costs. One of the reasons why we started a nonprofit and are using a nonprofit in addition to the project entity itself, which will be an LLC, is we can use a nonprofit and the donations and grants we receive to lower the soft costs of the project. So we can pay for some of the upfront costs like site assessments, we can pay for some lawyers to really make sure all of the project documents are correct through donations and grants, and that makes the final product, the solar project itself, cheaper for the owners.
I would add to that an additional benefit of that is because of the model that we're using, as we are learning, as Mason said, we're going to learn that once and then we're going to have some knowledge. We are looking at a number of projects, getting as many people in the community as involved as possible over the course of the next 20 years or something. So that's also going to lower costs in the long run. We're shortening that learning curve for every project that comes after, building more and more capacity for people to be engaged. Does anyone out here have a question that they'd like to ask from anyone? Bueller?
Oh, I was just kind of curious when you talked about the incentives for the solar, people that invest in a community solar system. How does that impact the people that are investing?
What's the payback?
No, how would it work? Because aren't those incentives through the IRS and you have to put it on your taxes sometimes?
Could you repeat the question?
So Alright, so just to be clear about what you're asking, are you asking about the tax benefits or are you talking about the state production incentives? Those are two different things.
Know about both,
Okay, so we're gonna try to get our first project online before the federal 30% income tax incentive goes out of date on January 1st of next year. So we're looking at a short window, and we will tell you how to work with the IRS to make sure that you're properly credited for that.
If you invest in
If you invest,
solar,
yes, ma'am.
you could take that off of somehow.
Yes, ma'am. The other thing that we looked at and we actually decided against was the state incentives, because the state has for the last several years, or last number of years, had some great incentives for building solar on your house, and that would keep it economically competitive with our super cheap power here in the Northwest. But with this project, we're actually looking at doing market pricing, which is actually kind of groundbreaking for solar in the Northwest, in my opinion, because that way we can do it without relying on the legislature, and we can just do it with the way the energy market is looking today.
But didn't the solar incentives go away that the state was offering?
So there's a production incentive for solar, which means if you install solar, every kilowatt hour you produce is more valuable because the state is basically saying we'll throw some extra money at you as an incentive. So the program is inherently flawed. It can't scale with the industry. The rates are pretty stagnant. It would have been better designed if they had made it so the amount of incentive steps down based on how much solar is installed. That would have made sense. They didn't do that, so the money got sucked up really quickly early on when the rates were high, and then new people coming into the program couldn't find certainty with how much they would get paid over what amount of time they would. It was very uncertain. So we decided pretty early on that we don't want to deal with that uncertainty, and we can make a valid economic argument without the production incentive, and not base our project success on a pretty flawed program.
I would add to that that there will be changes. One of the things that we know with the passage of 100% clean in Washington State is we're going to have to look at individual communities, at individual people, and as the state as a whole. How do we get there? It's one thing to say we're going to go to 100% clean, but these kind of projects are going to necessitate some changes in how we approach things. We anticipate a garden solar bill being introduced and passed in the legislature next year, one hopes, that would set up some clear definitions for that, to answer your question.
Are there estimated completion times for the Children's Museum and First Week or something? I'm just trying to get an idea.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, that federal... Okay, so this gentleman was asking about what our estimated timelines are for the Children's Museum #1 and some of our other projects, which may or may not include the First Street Reservoir and maybe the Meridian Reservoir. Sorry, I probably shouldn't have said that. So what we're looking at for the Children's Museum, at least, is the beginning of a new program. What's the program that the state put through? Or the... So yeah, July 1st, a new program that the state passed into law this year goes into effect. And then on January 1st, the federal income tax credit goes from 30% to 22%. So we're hoping to have this online before, somewhere in between July 1st and the end of the year, so we can ensure that we give the best benefit to our members.
So,
Yeah.
I just have some questions about the ownership, becoming an owner. For example, what is the minimum buy-in? Because I'm currently a student and I want to start supporting this now, but I can't contribute that much. And then also, is there like any plans that you can take on to get more over time, or just the different routes of ownership?
So that's been one of the harder things that we've had to work around. So we're going to, like I said, open up each project for bidding, competitive bidding from across the state. So once we go through that process and select a contractor and select a bid, we'll know exactly how much the system will cost. We can divvy that up into shares as big or as small as we want. We could have 10 shares for a larger price or 200 shares for a much smaller price. Since our mission is to make solar as accessible as possible, we want that to be as low as possible. We found, based on like national market research, I think between $400 and $800 will be our goal. It might not get that small based off our capacity to administrate, but that's the goal. And then hopefully there are some great local financial institutions. In the future, we want to offer ownership through like an ongoing payment system. And the goal there would be so that your annual bill for the solar project is less than the benefits that that project is producing, so that every year you see a net savings. But until we get really good financial institution support, we can't do that. So it'll be a matter of coordinating with local credit unions and the local cities, hopefully, to do that. One other thing we're looking at is a revolving solar fund. So instead of basically we set up our own capital account and put rules on it that say money can only be spent in certain ways on certain projects, and that way we can create a fund that's used to build solar projects, and then the revenue from those projects replenishes the fund. And so we have an ongoing revolving loan basically for solar. I think that's
We have about 5 minutes left for Q&A. Does anybody have a follow-up or a burning question? Tom?
Yeah, could you, you use the term market rate, and I think I have an idea what you're talking about there, but I'm thinking perhaps not everybody in the audience will understand how that works. So could you lay out sort of from beginning to end where the money would come from, for example, for the Children's Museum, you know, where the income would come from, and then how it would flow to those who are the owners who have invested or who have bought into the project?
Okay, so for those of you who couldn't hear that, Tom is asking a question about what market rate means exactly when Mason was talking about it earlier, and maybe a general idea of the flow of financing, so how things get financed and where the money goes after that.
Yeah, great. So the solar project itself is a physical thing, and we need a legal entity around that, which is going to take the form of an LLC. When time comes, we're going to open an enrollment process, and people will have the chance to buy equity shares in that LLC. And since the project is 100% of the LLC assets, you're basically buying a percentage of the project. So we're charging basically an upfront capital cost for ownership of the system. And then while the system produces energy and clean energy credits, we will pay back members on an annual basis, basically a check in the mail. Now, from the host perspective, whether that's the museum or some other entity, they won't see any upfront cost for the system itself, and then we're going to basically ask them, hey, pay us the same rate that you currently pay PSE for this energy, 9 to 11 cents per kilowatt hour, and then we will pass that through to our members. So they won't see any change in their energy bill. It's just a matter of that we're offsetting their consumption, and so their energy bill will be lower, and then they take that cost and they instead pay it to us rather than PSE. So that way it minimizes the changes that the host sees, and that's pretty much it. Did I miss it? Oh yeah, so at the end of the project, with this model, with the Hands-On Children's Museum, we're not offering owners profit. So anyone who invests and has ownership, they will get paid back 100% of their initial capital share. And then after that date, basically they cede ownership and the system is donated to the Hands-On Children's Museum. We estimate it'll take 15 years to do that. And then for the rest of the life of the system, the museum will have free, clean energy. And there are a couple reasons for doing that. One of the big reasons is a legal one. It would narrow who we can allow to participate if we offered profit. The other reason is that this isn't for profit whatsoever, and we might as well remove that from the equation. So yeah, it's pretty clear why we're doing it, and we just want to make sure that's reflected in the finances of the system. So.
Thank you, Mason. So we're going to wrap up the Q&A with a raffle drawing. I believe that Ari has stepped up to get the first raffle items. So everybody, if you have your tickets, look at those. While we're getting that together, I would like to just offer my gratitude for everyone who came out today. This is something that we believe in very strongly. And I think one of the things that I say over and over again, and that Mason talks about over and over again, is we're at a time in history where just addressing one little problem at a time is not really serving us. And one of the beauties of community solar is that we're looking at clean energy generation for the future and everyone who comes after us. But we're looking at that through the lens of community and what we do together, and building community capacity and community power and community relationships that are going to help us solve a lot of issues, not just this one going forward. So thank you guys so much for being here.